So recently, MSNBC did a segment where they were basically praising Joe Manchin for his conservatism and being able to be a Democrat in the state of West Virginia. Take a look at this.
Willie, Joe Manchin is really interesting to me in all of this. He's right. There are other Democrats that have some concerns about raising taxes, but none of them are out front of the cameras taking the lead. Manchin is both reveling in his public role, but he also has some more freedom to do it because his state is so red. There is no Democratic base really in West Virginia that he has to worry about. Yes, there are a chunk of progressives in West Virginia. The Democrats that live in West Virginia tend to be very, very liberal, but there are so few of them. And he knows that he holds that seat because there are people, frankly, who voted for Donald Trump twice who are also voting for him. So he's able to take kind of this public lead out there. And you saw Jen Psaki, I think, trying to continue to try to walk this very careful line of knitting together those people that make the Democrats the majority with an increasingly powerful progressive left. And so far, they've managed to hold it together. But I think that's going to be the central tension, especially considering this decision from the parliamentarian that we're going to be covering from here on out.
Yeah, and Michael, still, let's look at the politics of this, because I know a lot of progressives get very upset with Joe Manchin every time a package comes out and he says, well, I don't like this part of it or I don't like that part of it. But let's just look at the politics so everybody can understand what's going on here. There are a lot of Democrats that may have concerns about a bill. Maybe they don't want the corporate rate to go up to 28. Maybe they only want it to go up to 25. But they don't want to get out front for a lot of political reasons. If you're Kirsten Sinema, maybe you're balancing things. If you're Mark Warner, if you're former Governor Hickenlooper, you may not be as comfortable getting out and saying that, crossing the president, upsetting your base. So when Joe Manchin does that, coming from a state that Donald Trump won with 68% of the vote, it's good for everybody. It's good for Manchin in West Virginia to prove that prove his conservative bona fides and prove that, hey, listen, I can be a Democrat and still represent this very red state. But also Manchin's doing
Wow. MSNBC never amazes me, to how disgusting and wrong they can be on any issue. So the woman starts off and, she's, oh, Joe Manchin, he's such a, he really amazes me how he's just able to do the things that he does. And, in this red state of Virginia, the state is so red, she says, there's basically no Democratic base. I mean, there is a progressive left, but it's largely Republican. And, and it's amazing how he does this in this red state. And she was saying how, some Democrats that are against the tax hike, they call it a tax hike. It's not a tax hike whatsoever. And we'll get into that in a minute. But she said some Democrats are against it, but they don't really want to come out and cross the president. But Joe Biden does it. He comes out and he crosses the president. And it means well for him because of the, it's a red state. Well, let me debunk this theory. They say that those Republicans in West Virginia, they're basically insinuating that they are for the corporate tax cuts. I got news for you. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. At large, if you check the polling on this, people want to raise taxes on corporations. And I guarantee you, if you poll those people in West Virginia, a majority of them will agree with that line of thinking. You see, these people are so mistaken with their thinking of how these West Virginia Republicans are. They think that, oh, okay, they like the same things we like, corporate tax breaks for the rich, cutting taxes for corporations, and all these other stupid ass ideas. But no, they're not fiscally conservative. They're socially conservative. When it comes to economic policies, these people are actually progressive, overwhelmingly progressive, I'd actually argue. In Florida, Donald Trump won the state of Florida by far and away. But guess what Florida did? They passed a $15 minimum wage. I wonder why. How is it that Donald Trump, a Republican who did nothing but give money to the rich and continue the wars and deregulate and everything else, how is it that he won the state of Florida, but Florida passed the $15 minimum wage? Wow. That's quite amazing, right? And they say how he's walking a careful, how Jen Psaki was walking a careful line, but that's neoliberalism at its finest, right? You walk this careful line in the center. You don't deviate too far to the left, too far to the right. You walk this, as they stated there, this careful line, and nothing really changes. Thus, the status quo continues. Okay? It's neoliberalism at its finest. They say that the increasing, I love how they refer to the left as increasingly powerful progressive left. Yeah, that same left that keeps getting beat down and has meaningless infighting every other day. Yeah, increasingly powerful progressive left. I wish maybe then we actually get the things that we want, or we get closer to it. They say progressives get upset with Joe Manchin. Yes, we do, because he's for things like not cutting the corporate tax rate, or not raising the corporate tax rate to 28%, which, by the way, under the Obama administration, the corporate tax rate was 35%. When Donald Trump did his 2017 tax cuts, he cut it from 35% to 21%. Joe Biden doesn't even want to take it back to 35%. It needs to be higher than that, but he doesn't even want to take it back to 35%. He's proposing going to 28%. Neoliberalism at its finest. But here comes Joe Manchin. Oh, no. Let's go to 25%. 28's too much. As if the Republicans in West Virginia are going to get mad that corporations are getting taxed higher. Give me a fucking break. And I love how Joe Scarborough at the end says that this is good for everybody. Oh, it's just good for everybody when Manchin crosses the president. It's good for everybody. Really? Really? Joe Manchin, a guy that voted with Donald Trump half of the time. That's good for everybody? No, it's good for you and maybe your colleagues and your corporate interests and the establishment and, the conglomerates that hover over that little news outlet that you report on. Yeah, it's good for those people. It's not good for working people who actually want economically progressive ideas. Now, on social issues, yes, West Virginians are conservative, on abortion, on gun rights, on things like that. But they don't understand to lean into the socially conservative issues, okay, on gun rights, abortion, whatever. But on economic issues, they crave populism, left populism. But they don't understand that. And that also gets into the way of their interests, of their corporate interests. Okay, this is from the Daily Poster. It highlights how raising corporate taxes would hinder Joe Manchin's donors. So he's really, look, Joe Manchin, his subservience is entirely to his donors. He's subjugated to his donors. He does everything in the name of his donors, okay? And his donors particularly benefited, as all the corporations, benefited greatly. It can't be overstated how much these corporations benefited from Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts, okay? They benefited greatly. And Joe Manchin in particular, these private equity firms, Ares, Blackstone, and Carlyle, they're all private equity firms. They have been donating to Joe Manchin's campaign, particularly in 2018 in his reelection campaign. They gave him more than $200,000. Okay, that was the private equity and investment industry delivered to Manchin during the election cycle, right? And so they also, the Blackstone Group and Carlyle Group, they've also converted from partnerships to C corporations. Executive from those firms donated $4.4 million to Senate Democrat Super PAC, Senate Majority PAC during the last two election cycles, including $1.3 million in 2018 when Manchin was reelected with the group's support. So basically, he's backed by these corporations and he doesn't want their taxes to be raised because it hurt their interest, and he wants to keep receiving their money so he can keep getting reelected, because that's how you win in this country as it pertains to politics, right? Whoever has the most money gets reelected. I mean, that's what it is. And it's sad and it's reprehensible. That's what it is. And Joe Scarborough, the hack himself, sums it up perfectly. He says that this is good for Joe Manchin because he gets to prove his conservative bona fides. These people's outlook on politics is so wrong and so awful and so mistaken. It's so misguided. It's like, how are they here? How are they where they are? It's all propaganda. They want you to think these things, but hopefully, if you come across this video or if you watch something on MSNBC, the regular person isn't swayed by it because they're just spewing lies and propaganda. That's all that it is. Conservatives in West Virginia don't want the corporate tax to be raised. Give me a break.